and welcome to another episode of the Accountant Success Secrets podcast. I'm Philippa Haynes of Insight 101.
And I'm Mark Lee of Bookmark Lee. This is our 37th episode and our 31st interview.
Yeah. Through our podcast, we aim to showcase and celebrate successful accountants who have been running their own practice for a good few years and who we think can inspire and encourage other accountants in practice around the UK.
We ask them to share their stories, including the highs, the lows, and what they've learned along the way. Our aim is to provide some fundamental insights for you, our loyal listener. And we do have, I think we've got more than one loyal listener.
We do.
If you'd like to share your story in a similar way, do please get in touch with Philippa or me. We're now taking bookings for January and February 2025.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? Okay, so we're really proud to say that our podcast today is sponsored by Pinnacle, a trusted outsourcing partner with well over 100 clients in the UK and Ireland. Pinnacle CEO Mayank Pandya is a chartered accountant based in London, and he has a passion to encourage innovation and excellence in the accounting profession. So they have offices in the UK and offshore delivery centres across India, employing over 250 high-quality staff. That's a lot. With a strong focus on quality assurance, Pinnacle has helped many UK accounting firms to scale their capacity and operations. So to find out more, please visit www.pinnacleoss.co.uk. You'll also find the link online wherever you're listening to this podcast.
And you'll probably find Mayank all over LinkedIn as well. He's pretty active there.
Yeah, sure.
Today, we are delighted to welcome as our guest Anne Wordsworth, the MD and owner of Cube Accounting that she set up in Rugby around 10 years ago. Together with her team of 5 staff, the firm offers what she calls plain-speaking accountancy for freelance, self-employed, micro and small businesses. Could you stop that heavy breathing, please, Philippa?
Sorry.
Yeah, I feel I can say that now after 37 episodes. Anne has over 25 years of experience in supporting owner-managed businesses, having previously worked in 5 accounting practices, as well as in commerce, when she headed up the accounting function for a medium-sized business with an annual turnover of almost £25 million. She's dual qualified and is a fellow member of both the AAT and of the ACCA.
So welcome, Anne. Is there anything you'd like to add by way of introduction?
Well, I've just realised that profile is slightly out of date now because in September we took on our first apprentices. So I've got 5 employees plus 2 apprentices. So that felt like going back full circle because I started in an accountancy 30 years ago at the end of September just gone. And that's how I basically started as an apprentice. So to then be able to give 2 opportunities to an 18 and a 19-year-old as apprentices, it felt like I was giving back to the roots that I started on.
That's awesome. Love that.
Yeah.
So I need to update my profile, is what this has given me a little note for.
Yeah, I did take that bit off the website. Yeah.
Brilliant. So, okay, first question is, how did you get into accounting? And also running your own business. Excuse me.
I suppose, at school I'd always had, my favourite subject was always maths. Couldn't stand English, wanted to do something sort of mathematical. My father worked in a bank and he said, oh, you don't want to go into banking, and almost put me off that side. So I was then like, oh, well, I suppose accounting is the next route. And that's what I wanted to do from in my sort of teens. The route wasn't quite as I expected, because I expected to do GCSEs, A-levels, and then do a degree and then go into accountancy. But as I've shared quite a lot on LinkedIn around results times, I failed my maths A-level. And I didn't just fail it, I got a U. So the path was slightly different, but that then gave me an opportunity with a local employer who contacted the school where I was at. And literally I went for an interview on, I think it was the Tuesday, got the job, went into the office on the Friday, and the following Monday started on a bookkeeping course, not knowing a debit from a credit or knowing nothing apart from how to add up on a calculator. And literally started my accountancy journey with AAT back in September, or 30th of September is when I started, 1994. So it's sort of, thinking that, I'd failed my maths A level, I was going to have to go and retake them. I was going to retake them at a college that was fairly close to where I was living at the time in Cambridge. I didn't then. I just then went straight into the world of working at 19 and took that opportunity that was literally handed to me.
And you spent a few years there, and then you had a series of other.
So I spent 5 years there. I got my AAT qualification. I was part way through ACCA. I felt like other youngsters had come in, but I was still like the office junior, even though I'd got 5 years experience. And it was in the days when accountancy practices advertised their jobs in the local paper. And there was a job in the local paper, and I looked at it and my husband goes, well, it says you need 2 to 3 years experience. You've got 5 years. And I said, I'm still going to apply, because I said accountancy practice, like they do now, really struggle to get the right level of staff. And if you go to the interview and they like you, they'll probably just find an opportunity for you. And basically that's what's happened. So I finished off my ACCA there. And then, so that was 2 practices in Suffolk, but then my husband got a job, not in Suffolk, he got a job in central London. So he then had to commute into central London, and it was just too far from Suffolk. So we then moved to Essex. And at the time, everybody said, why don't you work in London? I said, I don't want to work in London. So I worked in 2 practices in Essex, one in Braintree and one in Chelmsford, and just continued sort of, learning and developing. But then that job that my husband had in London, their headquarters moved out of London to Warwickshire. So it was a case of we either move or he had to find another job. And I said, well, your job's harder to find an opportunity than mine. Let's move. And that's what we did. So we moved to Warwickshire in the beginning of 2006. So it was sort of, I wouldn't say I necessarily chose to work in 5 practices over 9 years, but because of circumstances, that's what happened. But on the flip side, you got to work with loads of different clients, loads of different staff, different procedures in those practices, which then gave sort of like a different insight into things. So like when I was in East Anglia, our client base was very farming, was very farming orientated. Came over to the Midlands and it wasn't. So I suppose I picked up lots over those, 19 years working for other people. And as bizarre as it sounds, I've never, ever had an ambition to run my own business. And then as I've been doing it about, 15, 16, 17 years, I said to my husband, I don't really want to be doing this like this basically for that same length of time again. And we'd got young children and I didn't feel I'd got the flexibility that I needed. I think going back 10, 11 years ago, a lot of employers weren't as flexible as they are now. And I think COVID's changed that as well. And it was just like, and then I got to the point where I handed in my notice because I just couldn't cope with the pressure of juggling a demanding job, 2 young children, husband not around a lot, and really health took over, and that forced me to make a really difficult decision, because it's hard walking away from something that you've built up for 19 years and you've got a decent salary to walk away to nothing when I needed money to live.
That's incredible. How did you then go about starting your own practice?
Yeah, so sort of when I handed my notice in, everybody couldn't believe that I'd handed it in, no job to go to. And I said, look, I'm not happy. I need to do something different. And so the idea was that I was going to set up a bookkeeping practice because we always found it hard to find bookkeepers that were experienced and did a really good job. And my husband said, yeah, but you're going to get bored with that. You're a qualified accountant. And I said, yeah, but I said the fun bit is going to be building a business, because that's something I've never done. I said, I've advised clients, but I said, I've never built my own business. So I said, that's what I'm going to do. And then in the interim, the practice where I was at, they had a lead come in, and it was to basically do a maternity cover. And they said, look, we're just never going to be able to be competitive on this. Why don't you speak to one of our former employees? She might be interested. And I went and did that for 15 months. And it was good to go out of practice into, commerce to industry. But I realised my love was talking about helping small businesses. I didn't want to be doing the same thing each month on just one business. I was used to sort of juggling 100, 150 clients with a team below me. So suddenly to be just in one business, albeit loads bigger, I didn't get the same enjoyment. So that almost absolutely made my decision that I was going to set up my own business. And the idea was it was going to be a small bookkeeping practice that fitted around my young children. And it wasn't going to be anything too, taxing's the wrong word, but too complex, shall I say. And it was going to just work around the children. And basically it was going to fund the rest of the lifestyle that the bills and the holidays. I needed to.
Sorry to interrupt. How did you go about starting that practice and getting clients?
So literally my first client was a friend who lived on the same street as us. He'd got a small business. He'd done similar, set up his own business a few years ago. And he said, look, Anne, I just can't do all of the admin and the bookkeeping side. And I said, look, Mark, you don't really need anybody. I said, and he going, yeah, I do, because if I don't hand some of this over, I'm never going to be able to grow and get things. And so literally every Friday for 2 or 3 hours on a Friday morning, I used to walk the 5 doors down, sit in his home office and do the paperwork. And I'd say, oh, look, there isn't really anything more for me to do. And he's like, yeah, I can find you more. And I'm still doing that client now.
Wow. That's still brilliant.
Still doing that now. And to be fair, that client, because it's a friend, I've never handed that client over. So that's about one of the only jobs where I now still properly do it. And then...
How did the other clients come about?
And then... the next client was just somebody that I'd worked for in my old practice years ago, and their sort of in-house accountant was retiring. So I went and did some. And then it was a case of I'd got these 2 clients. I had to give up maternity contract 2 or 3 months early because I couldn't juggle that and these 2 clients with my young children, because my youngest was only 4 at the time. And then it was a case of going to networking groups. And I can remember going to a networking group and I said to my husband, oh, I've got nothing out of this. And, oh, this is hard work. I'm not a natural at just talking, to people who I'm used to talking to clients that have, mainly already were clients. And then it just snowballed. It was a case of you pick up a little tax return from somebody and then they say, oh, my husband's got a business and their friend's got a business. And it literally just evolved by just talking to people and giving them good advice at a very fair price and just being very down to earth.
So what have you learned over there? Because, I mean, obviously now you've got a team and everything. You've gone, through quite a journey.
Yeah,
what have you learned then, do you think?
I think, I found when I was working for larger practices, the difficult thing was everything was so constrained on building relationships, and they didn't want you to spend too long getting to know people unless you were going to be able to bill clients. And it's like, that felt like the wrong approach. To me, it's all about the communication and talking to clients. The more they're at ease with you, the more then they say things that that then you can help, or you've got contacts who can help. So to me, it was all about spending longer talking to people and the rapport with people and finding common interests and common ground. Because a lot of small businesses find the accountancy profession a bit daunting. They don't feel at ease speaking to accountants. They feel like they're going to probably catch them out with jargon and technical stuff that they're not going to understand. And that wasn't me. I've got a jacket on, but I'm sitting in the office in my jeans and my trainers. And as soon as people realised that actually I was just normal and just wasn't trying to catch them out, I was just trying to help them in the best possible way, just very plain speaking, down to earth, without a lot of jargon. It just sort of evolved, really. And even now, a key part of what I do is talking to clients and communicating with clients and contacts.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me, and we had a little chat before we went on air, that you're very, you're very human in your approach, and you were talking about the fact that you talk to school kids about, your experiences and maths and all of that good stuff, and then you're hand holding some of your younger kind of team members, and then what we also said was, you're pretty honest and open about some of your own personal struggles on LinkedIn. You really do show that human side of an accountant, which we all talk about, don't we? But there are some that are really good.
We talk about it, but I sort of felt in my 19 years in sort of regional type practices. So the practices I worked for sort of had from sort of 10-ish staff up to about 250 staff over sort of either one office or up to about 10. So not any of the really large accountants, but sort of, regional firms. And as good as the accountants were at their job, they didn't come across as very personable. They didn't come across as relatable to their clients. It was a bit of them and us. Well, here's your figures, this is what they mean, but in such a way that clients didn't feel like they knew what was happening. So I try and make it as relatable as possible. But then when clients are struggling with certain things, bring it into my own personal and business struggles, because at the end of the day, it's, as most of us know, it's blooming hard work running a small business, and especially if you're wanting to do it on probably a lower margin than most of the sector, because you're wanting to help as many small businesses as you can. And knowing that, if I charge too much, then I'm not going to be able to help the people that I want to help. And if you can just make what seems like a real challenge to them, give them some advice or some pointers and break down and say, look, you're not the only one. You might be in a totally different sector. You might not even be in the service industry, but it's still, these are what I've come across. And I think as soon as you're really open and honest with people, then people respect that and value that.
I mean, you were talking about personal and professional struggles, and I mean, let's have a quick chat about that, because obviously there's a balance to be had, because you obviously run this practice, but as you've said openly to us and on LinkedIn, you have kind of mental health kind of struggles too, and you're helping some of your team members. Tell us a little bit about that, because I think as business owners, we all have our own level of anxiety and stuff.
I think anybody who says they have it all, they don't have any struggles, are they being realistic? No. Even the most confident and seemingly together people, it's not all together as much. It's that whole swan syndrome where the legs are paddling really quickly underneath that people can't always see. And I have had a full breakdown. I do suffer with depression. I wouldn't say I have anxiety, but I do suffer badly with depression. And I do take medication twice a day. But I know I absolutely love being an accountant, and it wouldn't matter what was happening. That's what I want to do, and that's how I see sort of my what I want to continue doing. But that passion for that can mean you work too hard, and on the flip side, it can affect your health. So as much as various people who support me say, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint, just slow down a bit. And I've had to sort of learn that if I totally go too quick all the time, then I'm not going to be fit and well. So part of my keeping well is I do have a counsellor, a therapy session, a coach, whatever you want to call them, to challenge my thinking when I'm feeling like things are getting too much, and put things into perspective. My family are great, but ultimately, for me, I have to have quiet time. I have to have time outside, walking in nature with it totally quiet, because my brain is very, I suppose it's firing with ideas and thoughts constantly. And I find it really hard to switch off, because I'm so passionate about what I do, and I'm a all or nothing person. So I have to have my time walking out in nature, and I have to have a lot of holidays because I work incredibly hard. And for me, there's got to be some benefit of working hard. And I would rather work harder to make memories and do things with, family, friends, the kids. I've even started, this is the third year where I've actually gone away to the coast on my own for a few days, just walking along the beach, just reading and just sort of just decompressing. So for me, quiet time is vital.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And as you said before, taking the tablets, the medication, because we need it in our head. We wouldn't hesitate, or think twice about it if it was for our heart or for any other part of our body. So it's absolutely right to do what's necessary to keep ourselves comfortable and effective. And I think also from what you've been sharing with us, Anne, that desire to help as many small businesses as possible, together with the challenges that you've faced and that need for the breaks and the holidays and whatever, is probably also why your practice is continuing to grow, because the more people you've got, the more clients you can help. And
that's right. Yeah, for me, it's not about making big margins on any one client. It's about feeling if we've got the skill set to help somebody, that we can actually do that and give them something back. Of course, we're charging for it, but I know what we're charging is a very fair price. And I'm always happy to help new starters and all sorts of things with just those bits of advice, because so many of our profession don't perhaps give back. And I know I was given an opportunity 30 years ago when it looked like, well, why would you want to take on somebody who wants to, become a qualified accountant who's failed a maths A level and got a D first time round in the GCSE on, in the panic on the day and had to retake and get a B. But if somebody's willing to put the work in, and that's what I've done, so I want to help and give that back to other small businesses, because a lot of them, they don't need a lot, they just need a little bit of guidance, and with that little bit of guidance they can really flourish. And so, like, as I was we've gone full circle, as in giving those opportunities to two youngsters.
That's just absolutely wonderful and fantastic. And by the way, I think I got a C with my O-level maths. I didn't even reach A-level or graduate. So
I'd like to say that I got a B, and actually I got a C in my AO, so I did advanced maths as well. And look at me now.
I don't know, but put it this way: the maths you do at A-level, really, you don't really need that for being an accountant. My husband's always teased me about this, and he says, well, don't all you need to be an accountant, isn't it just a big add button on your calculator? And it's always been like a standing joke, and I'm like, well, to a certain degree, yes and no, but as you go further on, it's all about communicating and interpreting the numbers and making sense of them. It's not about crunching them, it's about seeing it as an overview and sort of stepping back from them, because as business owners, even my own business, you're so in them, you can't see the wider picture, can you?
That's right. And
that's the bit that I enjoy. It's opening businesses to think about what they're doing rather than just crunching numbers. That doesn't interest me.
No, you're absolutely right. And of course, spreadsheets and now AI can help with the crunching of the numbers, but the personal qualities that you've talked about there, that is why you and your team are never going to be replaced by AI.
Well, I know a few years ago people said, with all of the software coming in, well, the software can do everything. But, surely you've got less work now. I said, no, we've got far more work than we ever had, because the software, like anything, the people who are using it aren't accountants. It's only as good as what you put into it. Even if they put good information in, they don't know how to interpret it and what it means. And every business owner seems now that it's not about, historical accounting was all you did when I started 30 years ago. It's not historical accounting now. It's wanting to see, where we are now and what we're doing going forward. Yes, we still need to see what's, crystallize what's happened, but it's just so different. So I can still just think of all the people that have said to me, well, surely you're going to be out of work. You're not going to be needed. But actually, the way people run businesses is so different to 30 years ago or even 10 years ago. That, now an accountant isn't about crunching numbers. To me, it's communicating, it's interpreting, and it's, making sense of those numbers.
Yeah,
absolutely right. We should just pick up on any mistakes that you've made and learned from.
I suppose, particularly when I started out with, Cube on my own, because I thought it was always just going to be me just doing a few clients around my children. That's fine, but then perhaps the way you structure something for you as just a sole trader, you as your own, to then trying to build it to a business with 8 of us and 400 clients. So some of the things I did at the start with pricing and and that sort of side of it, that's fine if it's just you. The systems, there weren't really systems, or apart from the compliance side, because everything was in my head, wasn't it? So, so suddenly you have to put these standardized procedures so that your team can follow so yeah, if I'd have realized I wasn't going to just be me on my own, I would have thought about that right from day one, rather than kept adding clients and then thinking, oh, we've got to put these systems in place now and we've got to do things. So I think that's something I would always say to people when they start, whether it's accountancy or anything, think what is realistically, what do you think is going to happen in the next few years? Is it just going to be you? Or are you going to be trying to grow a team or grow a team with subcontractors, employees, and think about that from the outset, because that would have made it a lot easier if I'd have done that right from the outset.
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about, people being out of their business and kind of structuring it so that they sort of talk themselves out of a job almost. But, obviously the reality is slightly different, that you're always going to be holding onto the reins. If you're taking a lot of holidays and recognizing the fact that you need time out, what have you put in place then in order to ensure that everything carries on? Because totally recognize that fact that mental health and proper sort of, you physically need it. You've got to take yourself away. What does that look like then with the others?
I mean, the last 5 months, I have worked incredibly hard, but June, July, August, September and October, so for 5 months in a row, I've taken a week off and gone away for a week's holiday each of the last 5 months. That almost perhaps was slightly too much, but certain circumstances added an extra couple of holidays at the end, with the 25th wedding anniversary and a celebration for my daughter's A-level results. But I worked hard in those 3 weeks. But because I have built a team of experienced staff, I haven't gone down. So the 2 apprentices, being like employees 7 and 8, they were the first people in effect we've brought in at the bottom. Everybody else has had experience. And the team is structured so everybody's got overall responsibilities. So although other people are helping, one person is taking sort of ownership of certain things. And I do very, very little actual client work. The client work I do is generally all advisory, apart from 3 original clients where I do work on them. But everything else is advisory work, which isn't that time sensitive that I can't fit it around my holidays.
I get that. I think that's a fabulous way to run the practice. If you're the one going out and winning the work, or if people are coming because of your reputation and credibility, how does it work effectively passing them on to somebody else in the office?
So as part of, yes, I win the majority of the work. The leads come through me, but the rest of the team do that as well. But I probably do the majority, by far the majority. But we just make sure that right from the outset, the person that we're talking to knows that it's not going to be me servicing the work. It's going to be the Cube team. They're going to have, more than one contact apart from me as well. And there'll be different people heading up probably different parts of the assignment. So they've got, several points of contact. Plus they've got, the generic email address and the office phone number for the whole team. Everybody has access to all of the client records, so whatever software they're on. So if somebody just rings up with an ad hoc query, if their normal person's not about. So it's about making sure that the clients realise there's a team and it's not just Anne doing everything. And I'm very open with people. I say, look, yeah, thanks for that, but now somebody in the team will do it. And I say, most of the time they can do it better than me because that's their skill set. My skill set more is the advisory and overseeing the practice, and that technically my team are better than me on an awful lot of areas. But at first I was a little bit, I don't know if I want that, because it makes you feel a bit, you should know the most as you're the owner. But I've realised that ultimately that's not the way. My skill set, yes, I know technical stuff, but I'm not as good on certain technical stuff as my team. And I suppose it's a bit like it's a case of knowing enough to be able to support the client and then pass them to the relevant person in the team. So it's very much right from the outset, clients know that it's a team effort, but with that ethos through.
And the key thing about that ethos is distinguishing the way that the team works together from the larger firms that people might be coming from, where the team were disparate and seemed to just work in their own silos, which is one of the complaints we often hear of some larger firms.
Yeah, I think often the larger firms, it can feel like each department doesn't speak to each other. So it can feel like, well, this is this element of the service, and it can feel very sort of like separate boxes rather than them all merging together. I suppose for us, the key is to keep that, not feeling like things are separate as the team gets bigger. And, don't get me wrong, we're not perfect by any means. There's always room for improvement, but the client service and the communication is absolutely key. And I just say to clients, look, we'll keep you in the loop at all times. And one of the biggest bugbears that clients come to us, they're not kept in the loop and they're not being communicated with. And I think if you communicate with people and set expectations, people are happy.
I think that's terrific, and that's probably one of the great secrets of your success as well. That communication, open communication with clients, honesty at the beginning, the rapport that you build at the beginning. It's not all about getting the numbers done. There's much more to it than that. Yeah,
and I mean, I was going to say a sort of summary. What comes across is that you're real. And
that's what I try and make it out. Yesterday I was joking with a new business, and the lady turned up. It's only a tiny business. She turned up. She got a little mini suitcase on wheels with their records in, and I joked with her and I said, Rosie, I said, I've been doing this 30 years. I said, I've never seen anybody turn up with a little suitcase of records. And we joked about it, and straight away there was sort of like banter, a bit of light heart. And I said, does that mean next time you come in, you're going to come in with 2 suitcases of records? And she goes, no, but I was just so worried that I wasn't going to bring anything that you might need in this conversation. And I said, look, but it's almost like that school, I've got to be, I'm going in front of the headmaster or headmistress. And that's how she felt. But she went away, having previously only had a Zoom call with us, went away feeling, look, I don't really need to feel like I've got to be on my best behaviour, so to speak, and bring everything. But straight away, that just, I don't know, the ice was broken just by that initial interaction. And I'm not convinced many of the people I've worked with would have had some laughing and joking over her coming in with a suitcase of records.
That's great. I mean, the stories that are coming out are brilliant. And as I said, it's kind of, it's real because you're human and you have those relationships, but real as well because you've said to us, we're not the most expensive. We don't always need to do lots of stuff for you. So, I mean, you're kind of real and realistic as well. But I mean, sadly, as always, we've sort of come to the end, but we could spend hours with our guests just chewing the fat and finding out more. But we genuinely appreciate you coming on, and I hope that everybody's kind of found that really, really useful. So for those who are listening and who would like to sort of follow up on that, how can they find you and your team? What's the best way of getting in touch?
So obviously, we've got cubeaccounting.co.uk as a website. We've got a Cube Accounting LinkedIn profile. We've got a Facebook one, but my team have to help me on that because I'm not very good on Facebook. So they can contact us on LinkedIn, Facebook, or on the website. And obviously, I've got my own profile on LinkedIn, Anne Wordsworth, and you'll probably see me with a picture with the beach behind me or some water out on a walk quite often in my posts.
That's lovely. Thanks, Anne. And Philippa, how can listeners find out more about you and your business, Insight 101?
Yeah, well, I'm on LinkedIn as well, but you can find me also on my website, insight101.co.uk. And for those who need to understand more about what makes them unique, because that's actually quite a difficult question, then please come and find me, because that's what I do. And there's not always everybody who can pull out their story as well as Anne has done today. But anyway, Mark, how can listeners find out more about you and your Soul Practice Club?
Well, online everywhere. I'm Bookmark Lee. Even my business card is a bookmark. I tend to support accountants who've been running their own practice, and they want the benefit of camaraderie, talking to others who are like them. That's what the Soul Practice Club is about. People come and join because they recognise my name and background and expertise, which is very flattering. But I always stress that the real value comes from the support, encouragement, guidance and advice, experiences that the other members are sharing as well. I'm only too pleased to share my insights on top of that. And I'm always happy to have an initial conversation with no obligation, expectation or pushy sales techniques. And sometimes people want one-to-one support from me as well, and I'm delighted to do that. I'd also encourage listeners to this podcast to reach out and connect with me and with Philippa on LinkedIn too.
Yeah, so just before we go, we must say thanks again to the sponsor of this episode, Pinnacle Group, Global Group, your trusted outsourcing partner. Do check out their website and let their CEO, Mayank, know that you heard about Pinnacle Global on the Accountant Success Secrets podcast. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please share the love online, subscribe and leave a review on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify or even YouTube, and let us have your feedback too.
Absolutely. That would all help to potentially broaden the reach of the podcast. I think we're a bit short on recommendations. So if you're one of those lovely people who listens regularly and you'd be willing to say so publicly, please do so. And do please also contact either Philippa or myself if you'd like to be interviewed on a future podcast in 2025, or if there's someone you'd like to recommend that we interview. Thanks so much again to our guest, Anne Wordsworth, and to my brilliant co-host, Philippa Haynes. Until next time on the Accountant Success Secrets podcast, or anywhere else we might meet online or in real life, goodbye for now.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.